Hi there, and welcome back to the studio. So today we're going to talk about the mystical art of analog summing. Why are we going to talk about this? Maybe because I like it. Maybe because I just need to justify buying all this gear, spending all this money. No, to be honest, there is a bit of a thing in it, and I'm going to give you a little taste of it today. So I've got a new song here that I've finished, and this will be on the next Kalya Scintilla release. Exciting times, finally, another release. So basically this will be the opening track of the next album. And for the last 6 months I worked on this. I did my usual process where I jammed out on the machines, and then I took all the stems and I mixed them and added effects and added new layers and some software trickery. I'm actually going to do a little breakdown video of this particular song, so keep an eye out for that. And basically what I do is when I get to near the end of my mix, I make sure that my bus processing on all my groups is relevant to this process of running everything out of the box and through the summing mixer and some other hardware as well. So normally if I was going very digital, if I was doing digital summing, I would basically put a bit more saturation and maybe a bit more shaping and EQing and compression on the buses than I have in these sessions. So when I'm analog summing, I know that I'm going to be taking the audio out and through some analog gear, which gives it color, and adding a little bit of EQ. And at the end of the day, the difference is quite small, but it's only small if you don't know really what to listen for and what to feel. Of course, if you're listening on your cell phone, you won't be able to tell the difference unless you're some sort of sonic ninja. But for me, the feeling that I get from doing this process is worth the time and the effort. And I did a couple of A/B tests, as I always do, just to make sure that it's worth the time and the effort. So I did a session with this particular song where I summed each of the individual groups. I think there's around 8 of them. I summed them individually through the Burl Vancouver B32 summing mixer and a little bit of other processing that I'll talk about. And I got all of those 8 sums, and then I resummed them again. And then I did a comparison to digital, and it sounded nicer, felt nicer. But I did a comparison to just taking the 8 main groups and summing them and putting a bit of color and EQing on them. And to be honest, the difference was so minuscule to my ears that it wasn't worth the time and the effort to go through 8 songs and render down 8 individual groups real time, sitting there. Some of these songs are close to 10 minutes. So yeah, it's a lot of time of summing. And for me, I like to be able to have a swift workflow, but also take the time to do things that feel like they're worth it. So let's talk about it. We'll have a look in the session here, and as you can see, it's the usual colorful tapestry of the DAW. And let's see, here's my groups: bass, drums, rhythms, synths. We've got subgroups as well, but we won't go into that. So basically I just route each one of these groups to a different stereo pair in the Burl. It just comes straight out of the Lynx Aurora into the Burl. So these 16 channels or 8 groups, a couple of the effects ones are doubled up. They all go through the Burl and they come out as a stereo pair. Okay, so we're going to have a little analysis because I figured out you can use Plugin Doctor to analyze hardware. Well, I didn't figure it out. I saw someone else do it and thought, hey, let's do that. So if I click this here, this will actually give me a curvature, the frequency response of what's happening in the gear. I can also go and look at the harmonic analysis. So we can see this is the fundamental, and these are the harmonics that are being generated by the transformers and the tape circuit, which we'll talk about in a moment. So what I'm going to first do is switch these off. We're going to bypass each one of these. And finally, that. Okay, so, we need to take that EQ off. Look at that. All right, so here we are with, looks like there's a little bit of a, it looks like the stereo image is a tiny bit off, but we won't worry about that for now. So basically, this is my my response from just going through the summing mixer and just the analog pathway through the rest of the gear, but with everything bypassed. So you can see there's a little bit of a bump in the lows, which is nice. That'll bring out some of that sub bass. So when I activate the transformers on the burl, we can see this little roll off here, and the bass is about the same. So that's what's happening as it comes out of the burl. And next we're going to go through the Neve 542s. And so that's what is happening with the Neves. And basically they're tape emulator. So they have like tape head components, and it gives a frequency response and a saturation that's akin to a tape machine. And I did try running it through the Zulu, but I felt like the 542s were nicer. They were just sort of a thicker sound, which I wanted for this, to beef up this these electronic beats. But we can see that the curve is a little bit funky here. So next I played around with the HDE 250 mastering equalizer, and I came up, after playing around and just listening to what felt good, it ended up being a curve that looked like this. And my overall sound was, as I usually produce, pretty soft in the highs, and sometimes a bit intense in the lows. So I sort of ended up finding a nice curve that felt good. And then after the mastering equalizer, it goes through a Neve master bus processor, and that makes it look like that. It doesn't really change the frequency much, although I do have the Silk Red on, which is a high frequency exciter, just to give it a bit more sparkle on the top. And there's a bit of bus compression with that, and that's basically it. It also has transformers, so it's going to thicken up the sound just a little bit. So the transformers plus the tape, that's what sort of compiles to add this, this saturation here. And for me, that it was enough saturation to sort of give this sort of congealing effect to everything, and warm it all up, glue it all up, and yet not be too distorted and not lose too much definition. Although I will say that for this particular record, I have been going for a smoother sound that's maybe a little less intense and sharp in the crystalline textures, and a bit more rounded, a bit more cozy. Still that sort of signature Kalya sound, but a little bit sort of dustier, bit of dust. We love the dust. Okay, so that's what it looks like in the old Doctor there. And so now let's just do a little shootout. Let's have a little shootout. So I'm just going to loop this section here, and we're going to start with the digital sum, and we'll listen to that, and you'll see the soloing change from the bottom one, which is the digital, to the top one, which is analog, and back again. And I'll do it for a period of time so that you can kind of you can close your eyes and you can feel into the music, because although there is a noticeable thickness in the lower end and a bit more sparkle on top because of the EQ, you'll feel the entire soundstage change. The digital, as to be expected, is just very clinical and flat, but when we get that analog flavor in there, things kind of become a little bit more alive. And that's why I do this, because of that essence, that analog essence. Okay, let's shoot it out. Cool. So there it is. The feeling of the difference between the analog and the digital. If I spent some time, I could probably play around with some EQ and some, digital saturation plugins to get close to something that's similar. But yeah, for me, it's just the feeling that happens with some of these analog bits of gear. I don't know. There's just some sort of jazz about them that I really dig. There's a feeling. It's really a feeling more than anything, and that's why we do it, for the feeling. Cool. So I hope you've enjoyed this little peek into my analog summing process here, and I'm excited for this next album to come out. Hope you all enjoy it. Sweet. Have a good one. See you in the next one.